Welcome to Portsmouth this week. I'm Jeff Richard. I'll be hosting today. This is the 1st of February of 2013, and we're looking forward to hopefully a great February. Today's show is all about the Portsmouth Fire Department. And with me on the show today is Chief Michael Granson. Welcome.
Thank you, Jeff.
The Chief and his department have just experienced a very critical effort done by a group of people from the Municipal Resources Company, and they were asked by our town administrator to come to Portsmouth and do an operational audit on our fire department. And it's a two-prong event in the sense that they were also assisting us in the scrutiny of filling the chief's position from a previous retired chief, and they did that, and that's how Chief Granson got selected to be our chief, and I congratulate you on that one.
Thank you.
The other part of what they were doing was to perform an operational audit, which meant that they were going to look at the following aspects of our fire department: community risk, vulnerabilities and concerns, organizational structure and governance, organizational, managerial, and operational practices, and staffing level. So they did a very comprehensive review of our department. And the team that was sent down by Municipal Resources to do that had a wealth of experience. Two acting chiefs from fire departments in New Hampshire. And I think the accumulated wisdom of these folks had probably 100 years worth of firefighting experience. Chief, can you tell us just a little bit about how that process evolved, when they got here, and how they did business?
Sure. Municipal Resources came into the station, I would say late July, after the former chief retired and obviously after they had been hired. They came down and they were in the process of starting the operational audit, but also of selecting a new fire chief. So they came down in late July, gathered some information, conducted some interviews in the fire station, as well as in neighboring communities with the fire departments in those communities, as well as the administration at Town Hall. Mm-hmm. Once they had all of those interviews done and information gathered, they kind of put that on hold and then continued with the hiring or selecting of the new fire chief. Once that was finished, then they kind of went back, finished up with some loose ends that they had as far as additional information needed, and then they prepared the report, which came out at the end of December. Mm-hmm.
And it's about 94 pages. I see you have a copy of it there.
I do.
It's extremely comprehensive, and I tried to get through it as best I could. But I gather that Mr. Klimm asked you to comment on that audit and to suggest how you would approach each of the suggestions that they made, and I noticed that you have done so. So at this point, you are going to, I guess, proceed forward with the recommendations to begin to make changes, I guess, to adjust. Do you have a priority as to how you're going to attack that?
I did. Well, I'll tell you, let me back up a bit. The report came out at the end of December. I met with the town administrator and we discussed it and the best way to tackle it as far as making sure that we go through every recommendation, trying to decide what I as the fire chief agree with or disagree with, and the things that I do agree with, when can we implement them, and what's the time frame for getting them done. And then we decided that the recommendations maybe that we looked at and said, you know what, I don't really think that this is appropriate for us, we would identify that and say why. Mm-hmm. So that was the original goal that I set up with the town administrator. What I did next was I sat down with the deputy chief and we spent the better part of a couple of days going through the entire report and really kind of trying to pick apart every single recommendation and seeing how exactly it relates to us and how we could make it work and what the benefits would be, and if it was realistic to get done in a timely manner, and if it was going to be cost effective. So we did that, we came up with a list, and then what we did was we sat down, the two of us, with the 4 captains that we have on the fire department, who are in charge of, each captain is in charge of their own shift. So there's 4 shifts, each led by a captain. So the 4 captains, the deputy chief and myself, had a meeting for the better part of a day, and we went through it again. We informed the captains of our positions on each recommendation. We allowed for some input, some valuable input really, and came up with a plan together in order to achieve the recommendations that we think are worthwhile, and kind of the best course of action and best time frame to get them done. Once we did all that, I put it on paper and submitted it back to the town administrator, and that's kind of where we are now. So there's certain recommendations that have already been implemented. There are certain recommendations or even portions of recommendations that will be implemented over time, just because it's kind of a labor-intensive process, as far as say revising our standard operating guidelines. It's a big document. It just takes time. We need input.
Did the company give you examples of some of the organizational changes that they have seen elsewhere that you could just take that piece of paper and put it right into your?
Right, they did. At the end of the document, the actual report, they put like an appendix on it and just gave us some examples of things that we could include in our standard operating guidelines. Mm-hmm. Some of them we already have, but maybe we can reformat it just to make it easier to read and more appropriate for the fire department.
Is that report going to be on a website? Do you know if the town administrator was going to put that report on the town's website?
I don't know. I think
I would have thought that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I know that it will be made available to everybody. I can certainly talk to him about that. I don't know. I haven't had that discussion with him.
Yeah, it's a lot of copying paper would be used up if we try to give everybody in town a single copy. But if you just put it on
if you can send it electronically or make it available online, I think that would be the
He did send it to me electronically, and so I can go back and look at it. Really good. If you took a couple of the more radical suggestions from that, what were perhaps the top 2 most radical changes that they recommended that we make here?
The top 2 radical changes, I would say, I don't know that any of them I would describe as radical. I mean, some of them are things that we as a department have kind of thought, but obviously it's a great advantage to have kind of an expert come in with an outside eye and look at it and say, yeah, you know what, this would probably be the best way. One of them is like reorganizing the structure of the department.
Right.
As far as the deputy chief's position versus the captain of training's position, and it's something that I have thought should be changed for quite a while. I'm just fortunate now that I'm kind of in that spot to be able to implement such a change. So to have the support of MRI professionals, confirmed what I believe.
Okay. The equipment section, they made what I thought was a rather radical suggestion, that it was to go out and immediately replace equipment. How did you react to that part of it?
Well, I know as far as the ambulances, the recommendation was to replace one ambulance immediately and another ambulance, I think, in the next year or so.
Right. That would be a large expense. I think did you say how much did we pay for the last ambulance that we?
Well, the volunteer organization that has kind of turned, they're a fundraising organization, and they've turned all of the equipment that they normally pay for back to the town. But they did make the purchase of this last ambulance that we actually just took delivery of in December, and the cost of that ambulance was about $220,000.
Was that purchased based on the recommendation of the team?
It was a combination of the recommendation of the team, and we knew that it needed to be replaced. Our ambulances are the busiest pieces of equipment that we have.
Right.
We have 3 of them, 2 that remain in service. One is our first run truck. One is our second run truck, which maybe gets a little bit less work. And one is our reserve truck that we kind of keep in the back and we bring up front if one of our frontline trucks needs service. So, So that being said, you know, we've thought right along that we should rotate these trucks like every 5 years. So 5 years as the first run truck, 5 years as the second run truck,
Okay.
and then it kind of finishes out its life as a reserve piece for 5 years.
So you're averaging out the annual mileage, which is about how much on the first line truck?
I would say the first line truck is probably in the neighborhood of 25,000 miles a year.
That's a lot of miles.
So it is,
Yeah.
and we found ourselves in a position where we had 2 vehicles or 2 ambulances that were 2002 models. And here we are in the beginning of 2013.
Right.
Our newest model that we had is a 2008, which is already at that 5-year mark. So we were fortunate to have the volunteer organization provide the funding. We were able to replace the 1 ambulance immediately. And going forward, I'd actually like to wait 2 years before we replace the second ambulance, just to kind of spread out the years between the vehicles and kind of be able to get closer to achieving that 5-year rotation.
And they did make a recommendation as to your boating. The unit we have in the water was not, in their view anyway, as adequate as it should be, perhaps. So they recommended another boat.
We need a boat for the fire department that has some real firefighting capabilities. The boat we have currently is a good boat, and it serves its purpose as, you know, doing search and rescues and transporting patients to and from Prudence Island and the other islands that are in our community. But as far as real firefighting capabilities go, it doesn't have a fire pump on it.
Right.
You know, we have a portable fire pump that can pump maybe 500 gallons of water per minute, which really isn't adequate if you get a marina going.
Right.
And I think we're all familiar with Portsmouth, and we all know that we have several marinas and plans for more marinas. So I think it's imperative that we really look at getting a boat that has the capabilities of, you know, pumping like 2,500 gallons per minute. There is a port security grant program. We can apply for funding, you know, through the federal government to try and get a boat, but that grant application has been put on hold, you know, at a federal level. And
It seems that kind of thing is a regionalization kind of a notion. That they mention in the report some of the things, the mutual support that you amongst the local fire departments, but also the regionalization notion that some places have gone to a wider district of responsibility. So Rhode Island is really 39 cities and towns where everybody's got their own.
right.
If you went to a county-wide or system, or at least, how could you conceptualize widening the district in the sense that all 3 fire departments, for instance, on the island would be 1 fire department? Is that possible?
Well, I think anything's possible, Jeff. I think the important thing to do would be to, you know, and it's one of the recommendations in the report, that we sit down as an island-wide, you know, community, Newport County, and say, hey, let's look at this. You know, what would be the benefits of doing this? What would be the cost savings? And what would be the kind of the downside of doing this? You know, what would we lose as far as services or personnel or whatever? But you know, it's one of those things. I think we definitely need to sit down and talk about it. Not just the fire chiefs, members of organized labor, members of the local governments, because there's a tremendous amount of impact, you know, for each city or town that's involved, as well as, you know, the union memberships, and as well as the most important thing, in my opinion, and that's the service that we're providing.
Right.
You know, so definitely we should explore it. You know, fairly frequently I speak with the other chiefs on the island, and we kind of have these conversations, and we're gonna actually try and expand our group and meet to actually discuss it and see where it leads to.
Yeah, they made mention of the fact that it takes so many minutes to get from our fire station to the remotest part of our town or over to Prudence Island. And how cooperative is the, for instance, if you had a fire in a home, What do the Middletown folks do? What do the Bristol or the Tiverton fire departments do in support of our efforts here?
If we get a call for a structure fire, say a fire in a home, what we'll do is, if we're getting multiple calls on it, or we can, you can see smoke from a distance, or something like that, that gives us a notion that, yes, this is a little bit more than just your normal, say, false alarm. The officer in charge, or me as the incident commander, I'll strike a second alarm, and what that means in English is that we're starting our outside communities right away. So if we have, say, a residential fire on the south end of town, and I strike a second alarm pretty much off the bat, then that's sending me a Tiverton engine, a Middletown engine, both to the fire scene, a Bristol engine to our station for coverage, and then kind of outside the scope of that, I will also call the Navy and ask them to send an engine to cover our station. And somewhere along within that process, I need to get an ambulance there too, because we need to have an ambulance at the fire scene as well, in case we have victims of the fire or firefighters injured.
Yeah, so we really do have mutual support in place right now.
We do. The problem, and I think what they cite in the report is NFPA 1710, which is kind of the organization and deployment of fire suppression resources.
That's a national standard?
It's a national standard. Okay. And what that is, it gives you a standard of what you should be sending to operate safely and efficiently at a fire scene to get the most amount of work out of the equipment and the firefighters, and provide the best level of fire suppression.
Gotcha.
But it's a standard, and that's not completely what drives, say what your staffing level is. Basically, the bottom line is, comes down to the community. What level of risk is the community willing to accept? So you kind of have to balance those and look at it with an open mind and say, you know what, we're not at a level where we're achieving the standard, but it's a good goal and a good benchmark. And maybe we can do things like increase our second alarm activation in order to try and get the outside departments there quicker. Mm-hmm. Part of the standard is your response time, and for a first alarm, they want you to have the first piece of apparatus on scene within 4 minutes, and the full first alarm complement on scene by 8 minutes. For us, that's a problem in certain parts of town. If you get to the extreme south end of town or the extreme north end of town, we're well beyond that 4-minute response time, especially in the summer months when we have more traffic.
Yeah. Is that national standard based on the placement of fire hydrants, the proximity to potential fire spots? We have lots of fire hydrants.
We have lots of fire hydrants,
yeah.
and we are very blessed in this town with the level of service we have with regards to our water system. We have hydrants within 400 or 500 feet of every home. In at least 90% of the instances, they're well maintained. They give us a very large, adequate volume of water, which is critical, obviously. So we're extremely fortunate in that respect. 1710 looks at things like how many firefighters are you sending on the trucks? Mm-hmm. How long does it take the firefighters to get out of the fire station, get in the trucks and get going? And then how long does it take us to get there? Those are the kind of things it's looking at, and they refer to that as your response times and your turnout times and your staffing of apparatus.
Oh, good. The staffing level, did they recommend that we add more firefighters to the team?
Well, a problem that we have in Portsmouth a lot of times is we have simultaneous calls. So the phone rings, 911, we answer it, somebody's having, as an example, a heart attack somewhere. So our response for that call is to send a rescue and an engine, because there's a lot of things we're going to do when we get there if somebody's having a heart attack. A minute and a half later, 911 rings. Somebody is, having a heart attack in another area of town. So,
do you have an option in that situation where you can call upon other,
so yes,
other municipal assets?
So we'll send. What we'll do is, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second there. But we'll send an engine and a rescue to the first heart attack. Say, the second heart attack, we'll send the second rescue, and then we'll call mutual aid and have them respond to help us as well. And that's fine if that's all we have going on. But oftentimes we have other stuff going on. Yeah. That 911 call rings again. And maybe again after that.
Yeah. I mean, we do have an unfortunate number of automobile accidents on our main highways. And
absolutely.
when that happens, that must tie you up.
It ties us up because we need an engine, we need an ambulance, and the other problem is then if that 911 call rings again and it's somewhere beyond that accident, it's much more difficult to get there. Yeah. So we do, and we rely heavily on mutual aid. And the surrounding communities are wonderful. They help us all the time. And in turn, we reciprocate, and we help them pretty much the same amount of time. So it's a very good relationship. One thing that was kind of identified in the study, which I think is important to note, maybe you don't think about it, but other communities, they can rely on that kind of mutual aid pact from a community from the north, a community from the south, a community on the east side, and a community on the west side of, say,
we're on an island.
Right. Yeah. So we're on an island. So we have Tiverton, Middletown, Bristol. We rely on the Navy sometimes, but we're really kind of limited, and that may not be something that a lot of people think of, but it's true, and it makes it a little bit challenging at times.
Yeah. Well. I wonder what would happen if they put a toll plaza on them. It's a kind of bridge, wouldn't it? Make it even worse, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
There's another good reason why not to toll.
That's right.
Toll that bridge. When it came, they looked at some of the standards, maybe the contract standards for staffing people, and they recommended that the town did away with minimum manning levels per shift. You don't necessarily agree with that?
No, I don't necessarily agree with that, and I'll tell you why. I realize that having a minimum manning clause in a collective bargaining agreement, it does somewhat drive the budget or mandate, who has to be on duty. But at the same time, I think it's very clear by reading the report and based on my experience, from working in the fire department for a long time, this is, the minimum number of people that we need on duty. And so to put somebody in a position of, say, fire chief or whatever, an authoritative position, and say, you know what, you decide if you don't think we need the help or not. I just think that's a dangerous kind of can of worms to open up. And so, I just don't think it's a good practice to say, you know what, if the budget times are tight, then maybe we should hold off on having somebody working.
Yeah. I guess the linkage, at least as far as I'm concerned, is that we shouldn't have to live our life in overtime. Because an overtime wage is more than the normal budget for people, and the current system we have seems to rely on overtime. And if you are constrained by minimum manning rules as to how many people you can have and when, you're always going to be having to use overtime.
Right.
Which is, from the taxpayer's point of view, is an extremely expensive way to do business. I mean, it doesn't seem that there's any flexibility in a system that requires minimum manning. How about the pension side of it? We are looking at most of our public employee union contracts now to be converting into 401k or 403b systems. What did they recommend we do about our pension issues?
Well, I'll answer the pension question, and then I'd like, if we could, to kind of jump back
we've got about 3 minutes
into the overtime. Okay,
yeah,
I'll be quickly. All they recommended about the pension thing is the pension cost issues is that the town and the union make strides to try and achieve a common goal of reducing the cost of the ARC payment, or at least the fire department's impact on that ARC payment, which I am very confident that both sides will do. I agree with you that overtime is a tremendously expensive way to do business, but I think that if we look back, going back to like 2009, we'll see that the department has actually been understaffed and had unfilled vacancies.
Right.
And I think that that's been a very critical part of kind of this exploding overtime problem
so
that we've seen.
Their recommendation to hire 2 additional firefighters might negate that overtime issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if that's the case, you're going to see the overtime account go down substantially.
Pretty good. Well, I know there's a lot of work for you all, and I wish you the best, and I think that we probably would have to have another chat like this in maybe 6 months to see how far down the line we're going, and perhaps some of the capital expenditures that we're going to have to make
right.
as time goes on in our budget. And it's very difficult. We're right now in the beginning stages of our town's budgeting process, and and our public safety is critical to getting that budget done right and still not drive all the taxpayers over that currently untold bridge that we have over there.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank Chief Kanser for being with us today. These are great times in Portsmouth, and we certainly wish you the best of luck with all this
Thank you.
work you're gonna
I
be
appreciate it, and I look forward to coming back and kind of sitting down and going through it some more and seeing where we are in the future.
Great. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
To celebrate Portsmouth's birthday, come to St. Barnabas Church between noon and 2 p.m. on Sunday, February 17th, and enjoy your choice of a variety of homemade soups. At 1:30, the crowd will assemble in the parking lot to form a human heart that will be photographed from above. Come and be part of our heart. Deadline for tickets is February 15th. Visit www.portsmouthri375.com for more information. Portsmouth's 375th birthday celebration started out with a splash on New Year's Day as several hundred people, cheered on by hundreds of supporters, braved the cold waters of the Sakonnet River at the 375 Polar Plunge. The next event will be the 375th Soup Sunday on February 17th, when you can be part of the heart. Then on February 23rd, take a guided winter walk at Melville Park. For more information on these events and more, and how you can join your friends and neighbors in the celebration, visit www.portsmouthri375.com.